bless all our gifts, and even a smile we will bless today. Thank you for all the infinite ways love is shared through our gifts to each other. Our gifts uplift all of life because our gifts are reflections of universal love. God's love, your love, my love. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And before we go into the Lord's Prayer, I would like to take a moment to introduce our lead meditation person and today's speaker. His name is Taylor Swan. It's a beautiful last name. Taylor began his spiritual journey about 25 years ago when he first surrendered his life to God with a two-word prayer that went like this: help me, help me. And after saying that prayer, the decades of weighted addictions and compulsions were lifted from him. And Taylor began to live a new way of life. He began to depend on the Creator and found peace within himself and began to serve his fellow man. He lives each day under the guidance and tutelage of Spirit, and his faith began to build, and new opportunities in his personal life and his business life began to unfold. Today, Taylor gives service to others. He mentors others through the 12-step programs, and each time he mentors and provides his presence, his inner light grows outward. So, leading in a very personal way, he follows his heart. He follows his feelings. Taylor completed a three-year course at the Fellowship of Today's Ministry School in Lansing, Michigan, and the messages he shares come from the quiet time spent with his Creator and from lessons learned in participating in life. So please welcome Taylor Swan, who will lead us into meditation after the Lord's Prayer.
I'm going to lead us in a meditation, and at the end of this meditation, we're going to have 2 minutes of silence so that we can get in touch with that inner spirit once we're relaxed. Okay? Here we go. Let's move into this meditation and get comfortable. Bring your attention back to your breath. There's nothing you need to do except to make it expansive and to experience it. Just notice the rhythm of it. With our breath, Spirit is moving in, through, and out of each of us. Know that we're created in the likeness of our Creator. We are extensions of that energy. Let's allow our bodies to relax, starting with our feet. Wiggle your toes. Flex your ankles. Allow any stress to flow up your ankles, through your calves, into your thighs, through your buttocks. Relaxation comes if we let go of anything that is not like love in our bodies. Stress is not like love, so we let it go. Up through our abdomen, through our backs. Feel the energy that is here today, supporting us in this space. Here to gently remind us who we truly are. We've begun to notice that there's not much to really let go of. Only error. This relaxation wave moves up into the chest, into the back of the neck, into our jowls, and through the top of our heads. A beam of light moving out into this world to open our hearts and minds. Now we're going to begin our visualization. Let's imagine our hearts and minds filled with warm light, illuminating every dark cranny until we see them fully open and taking in this wonderful warmth and light. Let us remind ourselves that our thoughts are what creates our reality, and that we are the creators of our experience on this plane. And so now we make a commitment to ourselves to only visualize the best possible outcomes in all of our affairs. Let's imagine that we're fully open to grace and to feel the love of our Creator flowing through us. And through all of those that we love and call family. Warming us and comforting us as we sit in this space relaxed and safe. Now we're going to begin 2 minutes of quiet. Now let's visualize us slowly coming back into our bodies. Let's wiggle our toes and bend our ankles and gently move our fingers and take a few deep breaths until we're present in our bodies, fully relaxed and receptive, ready to live in the flow and rhythm of life. And so it is. Experience is the hardest kind of teacher. It gives you the test first and the lesson afterward. We have Oscar Wilde to thank for that quote. As I was thinking about this lesson on love, I realized that some of my most profound lessons on love did not take place until years after I initially experienced them. Perhaps it could be the same way with you. Later in this talk, I'm going to ask the audience to list some of their lessons on love. What were the experiences you had that after the fact, you became wiser, more compassionate, and loving? I have a few love lessons that come to mind, even as I wrote this talk. So I'm sure there'll be others that rise to the surface of my consciousness right now as I give this talk. Allow me to share a few of my life lessons that taught me about love. My life at home was tumultuous with both of my parents, active rageaholics. I was blessed with Ella, my childhood nurse, and a wise woman who knew the importance of demonstrating love so I could learn of love early in my life. She was willing to risk her personal safety to demonstrate it to me. The significance of this was that as a frail, older Black woman, she would ride the trolley car deep into a working class white neighborhood, about an hour trip in one direction, to place this gift in my hand, a birthday cake made with love. I remember thanking her, and her response was always the same. She wanted me to know that I was loved on my birthday. This action on her part taught me a lesson in contrast, demonstrating the indifference and chaos that was normally shown to me and what love looked like when it was demonstrated. In my world, I considered it normal to be shown no love or affection as a child. She was there with a birthday cake in hand to demonstrate what love was once each year. Another incident where I experienced love was at the front door of my parents' home as I was leaving for the Navy at 17 years old. My father handed me a stack of prepaid postcards addressed to him and where he had written only, "I'm okay." And he asked me to send him one once each month from wherever I was in the world. I found this a strange request, but I agreed I would, and I asked him why. He said that he could not bear the thought of never hearing from me again. This incident would seem a peculiar expression of love from a parent, but it was the best he had in him. Today, I realize what a special moment this was. It was him telling me that he loved me. This was the first time that I realized his love, and I was deeply touched by this as I've thought about it years later. Most of these moments that I'm going to share with you occurred when I expected them the least and in places that were unexpected. In another moment, love unexpectedly showed up in my life. I was alone and I was exploring Chicago as a teenager in the Navy. I encountered a middle-aged man who asked me my age and where I was from. I was taken back by his appearance because life had worn him pretty hard, and his clothes were clean but aged. I realized that I had no need to concern myself for my safety because of his gentle nature and his sincerity. He told me that he had a son about my age that he hadn't seen in many years and asked me if I would accompany him to a men's domicile where he stayed. It was a large industrial space where hammocks were suspended from the ceiling. I'd never seen the inside of a pay-by-night men's residence, and he said that it was important to him that I visit it with him. So I did, and I'm glad that I accompanied him because it seemed to bring him a lot of joy and show me joy. He said that giving me this view of his life was as close as he would likely come to visiting with his son. I was moved by his trust in me to share such a personal moment. And when we parted, I gave him my best military salute, knowing that in this small gesture of sharing this time with him, that I was experiencing a love moment. I was rewarded by the tears of gratitude on both of our faces. And I was shown a depth of a father's love that I'd always longed for from my own father. So this healing existed for both of us. As I recounted these moments in my life, I realized there were a lot more incidences where I was shown love, many of which came to mind while preparing this talk. So now let's change to a different type of love story. It also demonstrates love. However, it's not from my personal experience. A few years ago, on a cold January morning, a man with a violin played 6 Bach pieces in the Washington, D.C. metro for about 45 minutes. During this time, approximately 2,000 people went through the station on their way to work. After a while, a middle-aged man noticed that there was a musician playing. He slowed his pace and stopped to listen for a few minutes, then hurried on. A few minutes later, the violinist received his first dollar. A woman threw money into the hat without stopping and continued to walk. At 10 minutes into his playing, a young man leaned against the wall to listen to him, looked at his watch, and continued walking. 10 minutes passed. A child stopped, but his mother tugged him along hurriedly. This action was repeated by several other children, each tugged away by their parent. All in all, about 20 people placed money in the hat. Only 6 people stopped and listened for a short while. The man collected a total of $32. After he finished playing, silence took over. No one noticed, no one applauded. There was no recognition at all. This musician gave freely of his gift. Isn't that what God does? Are we stopping to notice that God is sharing his love with us? In the same way, this musician was sharing his music. No one knew the violinist was Joshua Bell, one of the greatest violinists of our time. He played some of the most intricate pieces ever written with a Stradivarius violin worth $3.5 million. 2 days earlier, Joshua Bell had sold out a theater in Boston where the seats averaged $100 each to listen to him play the same music. This raises several questions. When we see another and acknowledge another, is this love? In a commonplace environment at an inappropriate hour, do we perceive love? If so, do we stop to appreciate it and perhaps acknowledge it? How would this change your life if you stop to notice that it is all love being shared? One possible conclusion could be this. If we do not have a moment to listen to one of the best musicians in the world, playing some of the finest music ever written, on one of the most beautiful instruments ever made, how many heavenly things are we missing as we go about our daily lives? Love exists around us all the time. We simply need to awaken to its presence. I'm going to share some thoughts I have about love and the manifestation of love, which I also call heaven on earth. One, my understanding is that experiencing love and being love are not the same. In order to experience anything, I think we also have to experience its polar opposite. And I ask you, what would be the polar opposite of heaven on earth? Might look a lot like my childhood. I come to love and appreciate companionship after the experience of the polar opposite, which is being lonely. Joy has more meaning after we've tasted grief. Two, it's been my experience that love doesn't always look like a Hallmark card. Sometimes it's hard and messy. And for those that have loved an addict or loved someone who is terminally ill, you understand how difficult love can be. Four, that grief is the price we pay for human love. Some of us say that we'll never go through that again, and it's understandable, but living without love is a poor alternative. Living life while fearing the pain of losing love brings the unnecessary pain of the resulting loneliness. Five, often we seek an important cause or an ideal mate or a great job or situation to provide us with meaning. And for many of us, it fills a void because at our core, we feel incomplete. Yet real love does not come from the external world, but rather from within that world. In order to appreciate love, this is number 6. In order to appreciate love, can we be that love? And in the being of love, we see love everywhere. I see you guys in the audience, and so I'd like to take a few minutes in the quiet of your lives. I'd like you to take a few minutes in the quiet of your lives and write down some of your recollections of love. They don't need to be shared with anyone but you. Just so you have them to remind you that you've always been surrounded by love. It's only been waiting for you to acknowledge it. I would like to share one last example of how love made a lasting difference to me in my life. An hour after I surrendered my life to God, after 35 years of addiction and misery, I'd been living in my old car and led to go to the VA for addiction treatment. Of course, I had only enough gas in the car to run the engine for the heater, not to make a 50-mile commute to Battle Creek. But God spoke to me and told me to stop by a church that I had occasionally attended and to knock on the entry door. I was shame-filled with guilt from having been living in my car, and I didn't want to see anyone that I knew. However, I had a new employer, and so far, in that last hour, I was feeling more hope-filled than I had in a long time. So I was obedient to my guidance. A man I knew that served as an usher at the church opened the door and told me that the services would not be starting for a few hours. I told him that I suffered from combat stress and that I had a substance problem, which I was seeking help by checking into the VA. He saw the shame in me regarding my situation, and he showed me love in that which was a very tender moment. He told me that his father had been a World War II vet who also suffered from PTSD. However, he didn't seek help and he died from alcohol consumption. He told me that he could only wish that his father had sought help before his life ended, and that he was proud of me for my willingness to change. He filled my tank that Sunday morning and sent me tearfully on my way, telling me that he would ask God to continue to lead the way in my life. He'd be happy to know that 20 years later, I still seek God's guidance and serve him by helping others that are also seeking to change their lives. I'm pleased to say that this man's act of love started my journey toward a lifetime of healing. I can't see you all, but I want to say that I see the love of each one of you. I hear the beautiful music coming from you.
Okay, so you don't have to share what you wrote. There's no, there's no expectations. But the mics are open if you would like to share anything about Taylor's lesson and how it affected you or moved you. And Taylor is also available for questions and reflections as well. So mics are open. And we have a mic. What comes to me, I think about the times that I was loved, and it usually came out of nowhere. It was unexpected. And it was such a gift. Times when I was carrying something and someone just made a space so that she can hear me without saying anything. And I felt freer after that, as if I was heard and seen with loving eyes. And I try to do that with others, just try to make a space for them so that they know I can see them and hear them with loving eyes. And I think in duality in the world of two, that's one of the purposes of the two-ness, where we can share and experience love by seeing each other beautiful. And when that happens, at least for me, I feel a freedom. I'm more open to joy, and I want to express myself more. I want to be myself more when there's more love around. So thanks. Thanks, Taylor.
I wanted to just share, when you were talking about delayed reaction, I think I've had a lot of those, and it's only been in the past. You know what, it probably all started at the death of my husband, because, we used to yell at each other too, but I hope our kids knew that we loved each other and loved them. But now that he's gone, since he's been gone, it's just, all I can remember is the love part. I don't remember anything that wasn't, and some of the things I didn't understand when they were happening are all beautiful now. I don't know what happens to us when that happens. And I have a friend who's recently passed, and she had a very hard time in life, but I remember the little golden gift she gave me. I'll tell you, people that pass, sometimes you remember all of the times that you had shared with them, and I've also gone places and be greeted with smiles and hellos and warm looks. And I hope that's actually, a friend of mine lost her partner about the same time I lost mine. And we came here to this church, and I was in an Abraham meeting, and she attended here. And so occasionally I would come in, and I was so impressed by the greeters who greeted me, at the door. And we've kind of let that slide as our attendance and the good old virus has had its sway. But, and so I started here and I felt that warmth. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thanks. Because I spent part of my life not letting in the love, that it was hard for me to let it in, because when I did, it was so painful for some reason. Perhaps because I didn't want to grieve the loss of where it was not. But I think love was always there, and I just wasn't able to see it or let it in. And I think, I think recovery is a great way of opening our hearts and doors to love. And I think this church is following that as well. So, thanks. And Taylor, feel free to hop in and reflect if you feel so inspired.
As I created this talk, there were so many things that came up for me, so many moments where I realized that I had been experiencing love. I simply didn't know it because I didn't have a real example of it from my life. I mean, my nurse who would bring me a birthday cake was the foremost example that I had. And when the best my father had was to hand me a stack of postcards, I realized that it had always been there, but he'd never been able to show it. It'd always been pushed down somewhere beneath the surface. And for a long time, I remained guarded throughout my life because I didn't want to go back to feeling the pain of having that expectation of love and not receiving it. And I realized, I grieve for those losses. I grieve because there are people I could have loved and shown love to that I simply chose to remain close to. And now I've got all this love that I want to share. And I want to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to talk to you about it. Because to me, that's what recovery is all about, is letting go and loving and trusting God. And, I live differently today, and I want to. Just like that man that filled my tank in Grand Rapids and sent me on my way. I remember weeping most of the way there because of the kindness that he showed me. And because he finally had an opportunity to give back to someone that was willing to do what his father was not able to do. So I had another opportunity to give love in the act of asking for what I needed. And that's a very important thing in recovery. We have to ask for what we need and accept it if we don't get it, but be open to it if we do, or if it comes in a way different than the way we expected it. Because love comes at moments we don't expect it, from people we don't expect it from experiences that sometimes we're not fully open to. And as for me, I want to give back the love that man gave me, along with the tank of gas, to launch my life into recovery. And I do that every day by being of service to those that are still in the darkness. And sometimes it's simply a smile. Sometimes I have people walk up to me in a grocery store that I don't recognize, and they say to me, "You don't remember me, do you?" And, I'm in my mid-70s. It's quite possible that my memory's failing. And so I'm honest about it. No, I don't. Well, I'm so-and-so, but you bought me a cup of coffee, and you bought me a big book, and you put your arm around me, and you took a moment to smile at me and give me a little bit of hope. And look at me 10 years later. Those moments occur. on a regular basis. I don't know when to expect them, but I would rather that than have someone walk up to me and say, you were unkind to me at a moment when I was very vulnerable. And I don't appreciate it. I like that so much better than being unkind. And I have that choice today. So thank you, Shannon, for sharing from your own recovery experience. And thank you all for giving me an opportunity to write this message and to re-experience these many moments that I hadn't thought of in a long time. Thank you.
And love from other people until I learned to accept my higher power, the source's love for me. That was the beginning. And then you can accept love. Sometimes you can't accept love if you don't feel it for yourself.
You
So
have to love yourself before you can let anyone else love you.
that's right.
And you have to learn that a hard way sometimes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when I was writing things down, it was easy to think of examples where people were, like mother and wife were loving me. I got stuck on, well, what about self-love? And I realized that I have a lot of intellectual concepts about what it should be and what is not happening. And I realized that could be an area that I'm kind of stuck on and kind of just hung up on that. Wonder if anyone else had a hard time when it comes to ideas of self-love. The writing kind of came to a standstill.
Inspired by that, because I find it takes a lot of courage to feel love. Because when you open that door to feeling love, you open the door to feeling pain too. So it is that duality. And yet that pain is always pointing to love. So, I mean, I spent most of my childhood not feeling my feelings. And then when I got into my recovery and began to be challenged by that therapist, you know, let's do some feeling work here. My gosh, the floodgates open, and I didn't realize I had all these feelings. So, but being in touch with those feelings saved my life because it gave me life. I felt alive for the first time through the act of feeling. So thanks, Dan, for triggering that. Light of God. The love of God enfolds us. Let us say together, I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. Let us say, I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. Together, I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and guess what? Wherever God is, we are. And that's the truth. And now Dave will play.